We are live. Welcome everybody to another in our series of interviews for our summer festival for writers. We've had all summer long. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Tracy. I'm a writing coach. My passion is to bring you encouragement and hope and launch you in your writing craft and your art. I'm so excited to bring you this series. We've had authors and publishers. If you haven't caught the other videos yet, they're all on this page and also on my YouTube channel. And I'll post those links for you in this page after this interview. Today, I am so honored and privileged to be able to introduce to you my teacher, a mentor, an amazing man of God, a passionate visionary, Paul Manwaring. Paul was one of the teachers we had when we were at Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. And he's launched from there. He's now in Europe. And welcome, Paul. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, Sue and I left Bethel at the end of 2016. Very clear call to come back to Europe to be a part of what God's doing here in Europe. We stayed connected to Bethel. Bethel will forever be our home and our family, and means so much to us. And so we're back here, probably involved in, I guess, three or four things really. We're part of an organization called Europe Shall Be Saved, so pursuing a strategy to see a movement across the continent, and a very close relationship with Ben Fitzgerald as well, and Awakening Europe and what he does in stadiums. We should have just got back from Rotterdam, but that's not happened this year. And then I'm really just working on my own world, my own ministry and teaching, and developing that, and just rebuilt my website to that end, developing resources for individuals and for leadership teams, and then representing Bethel, probably the fourth piece. And somewhere wrapped up in that is family and life and son and grandsons living around the corner, which we appreciate more than we can say. So that's really me here. If I'm not ministering, you'll find me making coffee, cooking, hitting a golf ball, going for a walk, taking a photograph, or just with my family, something like that.
I was thinking about you this morning because one of the first things that before I went to Bethel, BSSM, I came to some of the conferences out there and attended one of your photography workshops. And I mean, everything you do, you have such passion behind. I'm quite amazed by you and people like you. And you're not just in one realm, you're in many realms at once, and all of them are really creative, from strategic thinking and visionary type work, to teaching, to pastoring, to raising up people into their destiny. Where does that passion come from? And tell us a little bit about your story and how that's affected what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in many respects, my strength and my weakness all at the same time is diversity. I can turn my hand to a number of things, and so that's definitely been a strength. I think at times it's been a weakness. My story, I was saved when I was 15, and I was called to the ministry when I was 17. I wouldn't call it that today. I don't like that phrase anymore. At best, it's career ministry. As a result of that call, I was given some very good advice to get some experience working with people, and trained as a nurse, worked as a psychiatric and general nurse, and then left being a nurse and joined the prison service and worked in prison for 19 years, which was definitely one of the places where I definitely developed an increased interest and passion for the arts and creativity and all of those kind of things. So that was definitely a place where I was able to do some things that were different. And then my wife and I went to Bethel in 2001. Sue had visited for a couple of years before then, before Bethel was Bethel, before Bill was Bill, before there were books or websites and crowds of people. And then I went out and did School of Ministry for a year, and was then put on the senior team very shortly after finishing first year School of Ministry, and spent 15 years living in Redding, California. I mean, where does passion come from? You know, so, I think it's just my life's journey. I love life. I love the journey. I love how he works. So I'm just going to throw myself into whatever comes along, and I want to be reasonably good at the things that I turn my hand to. So that's a lot of what it is. I think the beauty subject is right in the middle of that, and it actually touches everything, really.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit more about that. I was just thinking about all of your messages that are you've got so many good messages. Kisses from a Good God, which is the title of one of your books. But what is beautiful to you? You taught us about convergence, which is taking so many parts of your life and showing how they can converge into who you are called, what your destiny is, what you are equipped for. And I don't know what to ask you. Like, all of those things have meant so much to me. What do you have to say to this group of writers that is wanting to launch, that God is calling to write and to share their story with people?
Yeah, let's try and overlap a couple of themes. And of course,
Okay.
you know, I think people come particularly at writing from different angles, obviously, and I'm not on here to talk about that. I probably come at writing more because I've discovered something to say, and so writing is one of the ways that I get to communicate it. I think other people come at writing because the writing is their art form, the writing is their expression. So, you know, and there I'm sure are many other things, but you know, thinking about this call, I thought to go down, you know, the two directions really of one, the whole area of beauty. Why is beauty important, and how does it touch us, and how does it link things together in our lives? And then the second theme to touch on is what I call believing my story. And definitely, if you're going to write anything that is your story, your expression, doesn't have to be your biography, but anything that is your expression, your story, your experience of life, the one thing key that I would say is you have to believe it. And so we'll come to that and have a look at that. But let's just start with beauty. I wish I could remember the exact kind of beginnings of the thread on this exactly, but my best recollection is that I was beginning to teach on glory in around about 2007-ish. And I was studying Moses because I got kind of caught up with Moses and glory. And my first book actually is called What on Earth is Glory? So I was caught up in this theme of glory, and I read these two phrases in the story of Moses where he says, for beauty and for glory. And it made a connection to me, this connection of beauty and glory. And it took me on the journey of starting to ask questions of beauty. And actually that's really appropriate. And then there started to be some overlaps. You mentioned convergence. There started to be these overlaps because the simplest form of convergence in our lives is I'm good at something. I don't have to worry about money. It's either it makes money or I don't, you know, money's provided. But the third part is I love it. So convergence becomes this convergence of I love, I'm good at, and money's taken care of. And so this love piece is in there. So for me, I will weave together passion, love, and beauty. They tend to kind of overlap in this thinking. So I started asking questions of this word. It's scribbled in my Bible in alongside Psalm 27. What is beauty? Because it says, one thing I have asked, that I may seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and there behold your beauty. And then it says, and inquire of him, ask questions. And so I started really this sort of, if convergence includes what I love, what I'm passionate about, what's beautiful to me, what is this thing called beauty? So And really, it was just a theme, a subject that started to grow. I think it's the book that I'll write when I'm not trying to do something else, when I'm not trying to put together a training course or something, and I have a title and I have a layout of a book on this subject. So I started thinking about it. I wrote a chapter in my first book. I taught on beauty and glory, and a couple of other things. As you study to preach, you pick up a piece here or a piece there, and I picked up the speech by Alexander Solzhenitsyn when he was released from prison and got the Nobel Prize for Literature. So as we're in a writers' conference, it's good to talk about one of the greatest. And two things that got me about this was, number one, he wrote in prison, and that obviously is a personal part of my journey, that I worked in prison and I saw such beauty and creativity in prison. So that was definitely a connection. But Solzhenitsyn, in his speech, which is worth looking up, it's some 40 or 50 years ago, I think it's one of the most prophetic speeches of its kind. He started to talk about beauty in the future and said, basically, he said there are three trees in the Greek culture: truth, goodness, and beauty. But if truth and goodness are cut down, maybe beauty will rise again and take the other trees of truth and goodness with it. This is a stunning image, because we find ourselves today in an era when truth and goodness have been cut down. Goodness for me is moral truth. Truth is rational truth, and both are being challenged. Both those trees are being cut down. And so there's this invitation for beauty. And so there's that. There's also the thought for me, because I think that one of the most powerful questions that any of us can ask ourselves or be asked is, what do you love? In other words, what is beautiful to you? What do you love? What makes your heart beat faster? What makes you come alive? So I started to get these overlapping themes of beauty has a place in the future. Creativity has a place in the future. What is beautiful to me? I need to discover that. That's a part of my own personal discovery. It's one of the keys for any of us finding our destiny. And so this kind of theme, this subject of beauty. So one of the most powerful thoughts, I think, is that we need another Renaissance. And the Renaissance that we had in whatever years, depending on where you look it up, it varies, it seems to me, how many hundred years it went on for. This incredible season of man's history where we painted, we made musical instruments, we wrote great music, we built great buildings, and the detail of that era is phenomenal. We painted pictures. You can study the Renaissance through the lens of the season of the Renaissance varies depending on how Christ is displayed on the cross. It's an absolutely fascinating era, but it ended with secular humanism. It ended with man saying, look what we did without God. And we need another Renaissance. And so I think all of those things started to kind of mix together in my thinking. The thinking through, we've had the agricultural age, the educational, the industrial, the information age. What's next? Is it the creative age? So all of those things started to merge together. And what's beautiful to you is a vital question.
Yeah.
So
Paul,
yeah.
What's beautiful to you? And on top of that, a lot of writers feel like they don't have time they don't know where to start, and then they don't know where they're going to find the time. And I think it goes along with what's beautiful to you. Like, what do you say yes to? And everything that's coming at us, a lot of it is good, but we don't need to do all of it. So you, as an individual and a leader and a writer and a creative, like, what is beautiful to you, and what do you say yes to?
Yeah, the way I typically sum it up now, and there are a number of things. I mean, I do love creative. I love a whole range of things. In terms of um, my contribution, so to speak, of my sort of calling assignment element of beauty, I would typically say that that's changed lives and changed organizations. That would be my passion in the context of calling and assignment. So, you know, for me, what on earth is glory is the whole earth is filled with the knowledge of the glory, that the world is changed. Kisses from a good God is really about, you know, being changed in the process of, you know, a tough season. Experiencing his goodness. My latest book, Things Fathers Do, is the journey of becoming a son who becomes a father, who changes lives by the way that he fathers or she mothers. So changed lives. And it, you know, when you look at, you know, I'm an odd mix really, because in my head I'm a job for life guy. I'm a civil servant in my thinking, but I'm on my fourth career. But all of my careers are tied together because of bringing change to people's lives: nursing, prison, pastoring, itinerant, fathering evangelists. So that would be there. For me, that it would be change. I love change. I love broken people getting whole, hurting people feeling better, chaotic organizations becoming organized, you know, organizations without purpose finding purpose. I love all of that. I think when you link it to the writing, that I think is where let's just touch for a moment. I might come back to the beauty piece and where it fits in. Um, I suspect now you're a writing coach. I'm not. I've come at writing as it's a product of something else. It's not the first purpose. If my first purpose is writing, then that
Right.
then there may be some other elements in there that I don't fully understand. But when it comes to writing, because I'm expressing something which I believe can help someone in some way, and bearing in mind that just the you know, if I was writing a novel, then the help that's going to bring to somebody is enjoyment and pleasure, and there may be some hidden meanings.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that for it all, this piece I need to get hold of is I must believe my story. And people often say to me, you know, you speak with authority. Um, I believe that authority comes when you believe your story. So that to me is this first key. So what is this story? What is this contribution that I have out of my life experience, that I have to give away to someone else? And the authority in that comes when I believe my story. And of course, the ultimate is Jesus. He absolutely believes his story. Now, when I say believe's an interesting word. In my thinking, whenever I say believe, I'm also mixing into that trust. So I believe my story, but I trust my story. I can lean on my story. I can, there's strength in my story. So I would encourage writers to start there. And even if they're, and I'm not trying to put a different value, and you might, there may be many different ways that people come at writing, but it seems to me that there are those that would come at it as a creative expression to create, to bring joy, to bring pleasure, however that, and then there are those that are bringing information, education, transformation in their expression, and those would typically probably start in two different places. But I suspect that for both, you have to believe your story.
Right.
You have to believe the story that got me to believe that I have a creative expression, and you have to believe your story that I have something to give you that can help you, change you, transform you. So that would be where I would start. That means you have to do something. You have to know your story. And I don't think there's anything much more powerful than becoming familiar with your story, with your journey. And I recently read something which it it actually was like one of those fresh, I had never seen that before moments. Mm-hmm. So I was when we went to Bethel in the months before we went in 2001, I was driving to work one day and in beautiful part of the country, and I said to God, give me one man's story of faith that I can follow. And he gave me Genesis chapter 12. It's a no-brainer now, but it wasn't then. Mm-hmm. And it's the story of Abraham. And it says in the Bible, Abraham went to a place called Bethel, east of the mountains, near the big trees. Anyone who's been to Reading knows that that describes Bethel. Mm-hmm. Anyway, fast forward a month ago, I was just thinking, I just want to revisit that chapter, and in the context of, you guided us then, what have you got to say now? Mm-hmm. And I picked up the Passion Translation of Genesis, which I just got the hard copy of, because although I'm happy for people to buy my books on Kindle, I'm a hard copy person. I need the paper. And so I've got the hard copy version of Genesis, and there are more footnotes on the page than there are verses. And the footnote for Genesis 12:1 was completely new to me. And Brian Simmons has translated is, instead of leave the land of your fathers, he's translated it, go find yourself. Oh. Mm. That to me is the creative journey, the writer's journey, anybody who is going to express themselves creatively. You have to go on a journey to find yourself, and it's fascinating. Now it's actually, you can look it up. It's a Jewish theme which Brian Simmons tapped into, called Lech Lecher, which is that there is more to be found in the wanderings and the sort of the conversation and the meanderings, and there is more benefit to the world through that than there is through going from A to B in one go. Mm-hmm. And that's our lives. That's your life. That's my life. You already told me, you're in Reading, now you're in Texas, you were somewhere else. So this is a key theme to me, is you have to believe your story. Mm-hmm. And I like to read what Paul wrote, and then I like to read Paul in Acts. I like to read what Peter wrote and read Peter in the Gospels. And the reason for that is because you can see what they learned from their journey. Mm-hmm. And people who know me, I don't know whether it was as strong a phrase when you were at school, but one of my phrases that I'm known for is, he wastes nothing, he gets you ready. And it's Romans 8:28. All things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. And to me, that's in there. It's that he wastes nothing. So you have, Peter, who doubted and denied Jesus, is the one who writes, be all the more certain of God calling and choosing you. That verse has authority because he once denied him. So it's that. Yeah.
That's so good. I really agree. As a writing coach, I agree with everything that you just said. I'm more of a coach for writers that have a story to tell of possible crisis in their life, but one that can help other people. And so most of the people that I work with are nonfiction writers. They are compelled to want to write, although many of them have no training or feel they're not qualified, but they know they have a story and somehow God brings them to me. and my part in that is just to encourage them that they can do it. Possibly I can teach them a little bit of writing technique that will make it interesting for the writer, because I feel like I'm reader. I'm an advocate for the reader to help the writer engage the reader with a story that's going to change the world. And so there's the art part of that can be part of it, can come into that as well. But mainly, yes, we call it, in coaching, one of the things I call it is the cycle of fullness. There's many things that we've learned in the streets of life and been equipped for. And some of us aren't that cycle hasn't been completed yet. We're not ready to write the story, but many of us, it has been completed. It's time to write, and the time is now, and you're the one to write it. That's how, in a nutshell, my philosophy on coaching writers. So I really agree with what you've said. So
yeah, and I think just if we go back to the beauty subject, we need to answer the question, not just what is beautiful to you, but what is beauty.
right.
So that's another question. And I jumped onto another kind of like piece of this when, and it was almost a stumbling in many respects into it. But I was just thinking about revival, which people who go to Bethel tend to do. And for me, the river in Ezekiel 47 is the revival river. It's fish and people jumping in, and there's healing. And I read it, and I just did what I often do, which is I asked myself a question, or I asked a question of the Bible, shall we say? And my question was, what kind of temple creates a river? And it took me on a journey, just going backwards in Ezekiel, because what we do know, which is very clear, is that the river flows from under the doors of the temple. So there's this river of revival, but what kind of temple creates a river? And I, in two passages, discovered one word, and it only appears in two chapters in the Bible, Ezekiel 28, Ezekiel 34. And the word in Hebrew is spelled Tokniyt. And the concept that the word carries is full of beauty and perfect in wisdom. And it's the word that's used to describe the king of Tyre, or Lucifer. And so what we have is, what kind of temple creates a river? One that is full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. And so this was another thread that got me thinking. So a temple that's full of wisdom and perfect in beauty produces a river of revival, and the river of revival must always lead to reformation, which is the fertile plain in Ezekiel. So we have this stunning three-part picture, which is a temple which is beautiful and full of wisdom, that creates a river that leads to reformation. And so this got me thinking a little bit more about what is beauty. And the problem with beauty in terms of our world is that it's typically shallow, temporary, and very often attached to the sexual. It's somewhere around there in some combination or another. It's definitely temporary, external, surface, shallow. And yet here we have in the Bible, Psalm 27, one thing I ask, that I may seek, that I may dwell. I think it means that I may dwell in the constant awareness of your presence, because the temple hadn't been built when the psalm was written. And there behold your beauty. And so it led me on this question of, what is this thing called beauty? What does it mean? And the Greek, and I think the reason I'm going here is I think that this is encouraging for people on the journey, because if your writing is an expression of passion, beauty, love, creativity, desire, if it's in there, which I mean, sometimes writing does feel like work, but hopefully somewhere there is some passion at the core of it, then this should be encouraging, because the Greek definition of beauty, their word, or one of the words they use in the Greek, is Hora, pronounced something like aura or something like that, hora. And it's the word from which the English language gets Hour, hour, time. And the Greek definition of beauty is to be in one's finest hour. So now we have this this convergence picture, because to be beautiful is to be in one's finest hour. Now, the Egyptians have beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That's an interesting, that tends to have the surface. My definition of beauty, my personal one, is that beauty is an attraction of the soul that invites to intimacy and that asks questions. How do I use what is beautiful to me to bring glory to God? Mm-hmm. So all of this, I think, fits in the writer's journey, because it is then, okay, if beauty in my life is to be in my finest hour, then the Kisses from a Good God book comes out of a finest hour. It comes out of a moment in my life, the 3 months, the fighting cancer, the lessons, the goodness of God, the preaching it, the changing some hearts and minds. So as people are writing, I think to realize that there is a deeper beauty. And so what I would say is that to ask the question, what's beautiful to me? What's beautiful in this writing assignment? And how can I use what's beautiful to me to bring glory to God? Because that's the Psalm 27 sequence. And what's beautiful to me isn't the same as what's beautiful to you. And that's because we've all got a different piece of the heart of God put inside of us, and our assignment is to express it.
Whoa, we just covered a lot. I got all these questions.
I told you it was dangerous. You gave me a load of stuff.
I love that. I just feel like you are a poet, Paul. The way you think and the love that's in your heart and the way you talk about beauty is poetry to me, and it helps me rise above my own inhibitions of not thinking I can do it or not thinking I can write, to express that well, and it helps me realize that I just begin. I just have to begin and trust that God is writing with me, the beautiful creator of the universe. And I'm not in this alone. And there's a reason I've been given this story, trusted with this story. And then he's not going to just leave it there. He's going to be right with us, writing it with us. And do you have some testimonies you can tell me about your own writing process and how God has given you the story, written with you, and taken it to a people?
Well, definitely. What on Earth is Glory was me expressing a journey and a season of my life. I didn't call it that, but it was very much, I went on the journey of sonship, and that was definitely a huge revelation to me, of discovering that I stopped being a son, and that first part of that book. But what then started to happen was, I'm then asking questions. Romans 8, the whole earth is waiting for the revealing of the sons of God, of the glory of the sons of God. And so that linked me to sons and then to glory. But my favorite moment, it's probably my favorite moment of anything related to teaching or writing, although there are many of them. And I've already told you part of how I work, which is I ask questions. So what kind of temple creates a river was a question. I had no idea that the the answer would take me. And so one day I was sitting down, I was thinking about glory. I knew the verse. Everybody knows the verse, show me your glory. That Moses says to God, show me your glory. It's outrageous. It's an outrageous question or request, because Moses had seen more than any of us have seen. No one has come close to stopping Red Seas or manna in the desert or quails knee deep or water out of rocks or pillars of cloud or pillars of fire, leprous hands. Nobody has come close. And he says, show me your glory. And I took a piece of paper that morning and I thought, how many times have you climbed up a mountain? I don't remember anyone ever teaching it. And I just went, okay, climb number 1, the 10 Commandments. Climb number 2 was when the tablets were first written on and God told you how to build a tabernacle. And in between 2 and 3, you said, show me your glory. And God took you up the mountain and changed the subject from glory to goodness. And I at some point said something to my wife about it. And she said, well, I said, why did he change the subject? And she said, he didn't. It's the same subject. There's no difference between glory and his goodness. But what I discovered was that it was on that 3rd trip up the mountain that Moses' face shone. And he'd been in the presence of God before, but it was when God told him his goodness that it caused his face to shine. And he came down the mountain with a face shining, not because he'd been in the presence, but because he'd heard of the goodness of God. And what I didn't know then, which I've since discovered, is that verse which God said to Moses, when Moses is hidden in the cleft of the rock, covered by the hand of God, when Moses only glimpses the backside of God when he's passing by, that verse, I, the Lord God, full of loving kindness, compassion, is the most quoted verse in the Bible by the Bible. In other words, that verse is written by other authors in other ways in the Bible, and it is the most repeated verse. I didn't know that then. I know that now. That I would say for me was a moment when I knew, and I can remember the first time I preached it, and I know who was sitting on the front row, and I know who was making the most noise about something that I just found. And then I think that was definitely significant. The other one for me was I have a Thompson Chain Reference Bible, and I was reading it, and I noticed in the margin of the Bible the word Shekinah, and yet the word that was translated wasn't Shekinah, and I was a bit confused by that. And I happened to be reading another book at the time. They told their stories, the children of the Azusa Street Revival stories, which is a stunning little book.
I've read that. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great book. Well, I'm one of those crazy people that reads the books. I read the introduction. I read cover to cover when I read books. If I read a whole book, I'll read the whole book. And in the front of the book, there is a little definition of Shekinah. And Shekinah is the dwelling place of a dwelling God. And I discovered reading that book that it wasn't a biblical word. Shekinah doesn't appear in the Bible. And that took me on a journey. It's a huge part of my message around that actually our assignment is Shekinah glory. And it's not our identity, but it is our assignment, because our assignment is to be the dwelling place of a dwelling God.
I love that.
Those things just came out of me asking questions along the way, really. But I think all of those then have that, they all have to be about believing our story. You know, the biggest thing that any of us have to overcome is actually believing that somebody would want to read what we've written.
Right.
that there would be a value, that we have to be that incredible mixture of confident and humility. It's the challenge, I think, for us all, is to find that as we write, which is why beauty and passion and confidence and that they're important. And probably one other thing that I would add to this is I hear a lot of people talk about perfection versus excellence, but I started thinking about this probably about 15 months ago, and others might have said something similar. But the thing I discovered is that excellence is a pursuit. And so perfection, we're driven to perfection, but we're drawn to excellence. Perfection is a trap. Perfection, there's never enough. But excellence, there's more than enough. But so understanding in the writing journey that it's a pursuit of something, it's a journey that, I mean, for instance, let me just give you a statement of excellence is Bethel's a cancer-free zone. Now, it's not a statement of perfection because people die of cancer there, but it is a statement of excellence.
That's good.
And it's because it's a journey. It's excellence is pulling heaven down. It's not saying that we've arrived. And I think that that's, for most of us, our writing will probably be in that place and needs to be in that place. And the challenge is to overcome and to beat the perfection thing and to embrace the excellence piece, because excellence is a journey. Excellence is a pursuit.
Yes.
I mean, perfection is never satisfied. Excellence is satisfied. Perfection says, I'm not satisfied and there's not enough. Excellence says, I'm satisfied and there's always more. So the writing journey, the creative journey has to fit into that dynamic, because otherwise unless we're extraordinarily arrogant people, we won't keep going on the journey.
I'm so glad that you brought that subject up about perfection and excellence. And I totally agree. I've just, in the last year, recognized that more. It's been on my heart more to help people, because if we're striving for perfection, that's not a good place to be. Yeah. And we'll never get the job done, because we could always do it better. I'm an editor. If I'm writing a book, and I've written some books, I would never have gotten it off my computer had I been striving for perfection, because every time I read my manuscript, I can find something wrong with it, or something I should have added, or it would have never gotten it done. And I think God is saying to us, I've given you a story, I'm writing it with you. Let's make it excellent. You know, that's where we're going for, and get it off our computer and into somebody's hands, because I've got people that I want to show your story to. And I like what you said too about glory. You know, what we're doing in a pursuit of telling our story through the art of writing, or the skill of writing, is bringing glory to God. It is a I don't know if you call it a sacrifice to the God, but it's an act of worship to the Lord, when we're doing what He's put on our heart to do, and following through and overcoming fear. There's so much in that's going through the process of telling our story. And I really think there's two verses I'm thinking of. Psalm 45:1, that's, my tongue is the pen of a skillful writer. I think it goes both ways. If we can tell the story with our tongue, we can write the story. It's a conversation. And the other verse I'm thinking of is the last chapter in the book of John that talks about if all the books were to be written of all the things that Jesus did, there wouldn't be enough room in the world. And I feel like that is a prophetic word for this day. In the last 10 to 20 years, I have met so many writers. So many people have come to me saying they have a story in their heart and they think they're supposed to write it. I feel like God is calling up writers in this generation at this time to release our stories, to bring hope. And we're still telling the stories of Jesus. It's all bringing glory to him. It's all about him and what he's doing. He hasn't stopped doing things. And it's so exciting to be able to tell our own story and to be humble and to be vulnerable and to see where God takes those words and what he does with them. And not to worry. So many people worry about how am I going to sell this and it's going to cost a lot. You know, to me, those are like, I don't think of the terms as much. I know that's a worry and that's a concern, but I just feel like if God's given us the story, he's going to find a way for us to release it. Do you have anything to say about that?
I mean, I think it's definitely it's definitely one of the challenges around writing is finding the sweet spot between expressing yourself and it being a means of making money, so to speak. Those two ends of the spectrum. That is definitely a challenging piece of the writing journey, and I think that different ones of us, again, we're going to come at that from different angles depending on our lives, and whether it is our means of income or whether it is our artistic expression or whether it is our contribution. The comment you made earlier, I agree with it, that writing is an act of worship. I think that we the way I come at that is always from Exodus 3:12, where God says to Moses, you'll know that you'll know that I am sent you, really, is what he's saying. When you come back to this mountain and worship me, which actually means serve, it's not worship at all. He doesn't come back with a guitar and start singing. And what's interesting is that it's the confirmation of the I am that's in Moses is the I am that's in God. And you'll know that when these two converge, when I can see my little I am in your big I am, that's the great act of worship. So I think it's that we're looking for. And interestingly, in that story, my understanding of that story is that God gave Moses, which is interesting when we're talking about writers and communicators. He gave Moses a rod as a fallback for his voice, because at that moment Moses said, I can't speak. What Moses failed to do was to actually transition to speaking to rocks. He never graduated to speaking to rocks. And so when the reason he didn't go in the promised land is because he failed to graduate to speaking to rocks, and he carried on hitting rocks because he didn't ever step fully into the identity of the I am that he'd been originally commissioned with it. And if my understanding's correct, Moses got across the Red Sea with a rod, but Joshua got across the Jordan with a voice. So I think in there for all of us is this journey of graduation and I'm working with something at the moment and thinking, that's what I'm meant to do, because this is my little I am that fits in your big I am. And so it is an act of worship. I think sometimes that meaning can get lost, though, because we go to sort of trying to write a book in the middle of a worship meeting kind of picture in our heads, and it isn't that. It is it's us fulfilling our assignment and our calling and doing something. And when we do that and we do it well, it actually is honoring and glorifying and worshiping God, because it's what he had in his heart when he made us.
I love how you said that. And I remember something too that we learned at Bethel. I'm not really sure who said it. It could have been you or could have been Bill, someone else, Teresa. But when we create with God, we are participating in the continuing, ongoing creation of the universe. And it's just like we're partnering with God in that amazing process. And we have a moment of knowing that when we're in the act of creating, there's some, you called it a sweet spot too. We mentioned that before, but there's a sweet spot there where time goes away. We're full of love and joy. We're creating, and there's something that takes over. That's an amazing blessing, I think, that God gives us in working with him when and things just begin to flow and the words begin to spill out and the story begins to take shape, and there begins to be hope as we take those steps forward and so conquer those giants of fear, right?
Yeah, and overcoming, being confident, believing our story, discovering the peace of God that he put in us. What's beautiful to me is not the same as someone else, but it's as
Yeah.
if, the way I view it is, we've got used to pixels in computer screens now. If my computer screen is however many, let's say my computer screen, for the sake of this, is 8 billion pixels, one for every human being. If every pixel is a piece of the heart of God, and I fail to find what's beautiful to me, there's a pixel missing in the picture. There's a white dot on my computer screen. There's a flaw in it. So as we continually are finding what's our beauty, we're actually completing the creation story by showing that piece to the world, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be the classic artistic expressions. It includes them, but it might be building machines.
Yes.
It might be driving buses. It's if and when people find that, it's like chariots of fire. When I run, I feel his pleasure. He was saying the same thing. He was saying, God's a runner and I'm a runner.
Oh, I love
He
it.
loves running, I love running. It's the same thing. God's a rider, I'm a rider. God's an architect, I'm an architect. God's a strategist, I'm a strategist.
I love it. Well, we're coming down to the end of our hour, and I want to honor your time. So we have a few more minutes. I wanted you to have a chance to talk about your newest book, Things Fathers Do. And then I know you love to close things. So I was wondering if you would close us out today. Okay.
Yeah, I preached on the way back from, I flew home from Brazil, trip of a lifetime with my youngest son. I'd been 2 weeks in Brazil watching the World Cup, the soccer World Cup, football World Cup. And I was preaching on the Sunday morning, and I wrote a message on a plane, Things Fathers Do. And I wrote 32 things that fathers do. And, I think sometimes we can get criticized from doing. I hear people say, I'm a human being, not a human doing. Yeah, I kind of get it. But the first thing God did when he showed up was did something he created. And so when we do out of our identity, out of who we are, we're actually revealing the Father. And so I wrote Things Fathers Do, the ladies, because you're made in the image of God. Women are made in the image of God. So men and women reveal the Father. It's our great assignment. It's our great privilege. So Things Fathers Do is a practical, it's my journey of sonship. I unpack some thoughts around our God is a jealous God, and I call it holy jealousy. I wrote about the things women do, the eternal journey of sonship, and these. Actually, I think there's 28 individual chapters, which you could kind of almost take as a daily little devotional about things fathers do. And when we do those things, we reveal the Father, and that is our great assignment. So I've written that. That's available on Bethel and Amazon and Kindle.
I'm planning on ordering it right away.
Right.
So
But
I
I'm
can't
really
wait to
happy
read
with
it.
it. I like the way it came out because it's
It's
cover wise and color wise. I enjoyed the way that came out.
it's
And then,
beautiful.
you know, I've been working on some other things just lately, rebuilding my website, and produced a revival leadership school on there. And the thing that you mentioned is actually on my website, which is closing worship, which is something that's a passion of mine. I like closing worship. I like grabbing that moment. I call it maximize the moment, a moment when God is present and the people are present and anything's possible.
Oh,
So, yeah, I've been working on those things. If there's any leaders out there, I'm actually, the thing that I feel like the Lord's currently prompting me to do is to teach a webinar series, post-COVID strategic planning, and to really to take people on a journey of writing a strategic plan for 2021, whether it's personal or organizational, and that we could be architects of a better future. And God is the great architect, so we should be the architects of a better future. So that's my current project that I'm putting my energy into. So,
I love that. So you're going to do a webinar and some teaching. Are you coaching too, or just working with leaders, or?
I'm going to make it available. I was thinking about it and I realized I teach the secular sacred shouldn't be divided. So I'm going to teach strategic planning for individuals, for churches, for ministries, for businesses, for organizations. I'm going to do it in one go. I'm going to produce slightly different worksheets depending on which one of those you're in, and do 12 90-minute webinars starting the end of September, and really working through this post-COVID. What future can we build, be architects of? We've come from, I think, my view is we had postmodernism, out of control. The pandemic is, for me, the best description is the disruption of modernity. The question is, how then shall we live? Let's be architects of a better future.
How then shall we live? Yep. I love that whole concept. I can't wait to see it come out. I will share your information with our writers too. So I love that resource. So Paul, thank you so much for this. I just appreciate you so much.
You're very welcome.
Can you pray us out
Yeah,
this
sure.
morning?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Father, thanks for the gift that you have given to us, the gift of beauty, that our lives are these beautiful journeys, and you waste nothing. You got us ready. You got us ready for this next season. You've been preparing us. I thank you. I pray that there will be a release of an awareness of what is beautiful to everyone watching this, and that there would be something that happens, an impartation, a desire to find it, a pursuit, what's beautiful to me, and that every one of us would be able to get those words of the psalmist in our hearts and our heads, that we have this desire to pursue beauty and to use what's beautiful to us to bring glory to your name. And our desire is a renaissance, another renaissance that doesn't end with secular humanism, but ends with giving glory to God. So Father, would you release a fresh awareness of beauty, and that every one of us would be able to use what is beautiful to us to bring glory to your name. So Father, thank you for everyone on here. And I just pray that there would be also an impartation of believing our stories, and that out of that you would release authority, that in the things that we say and write and do, there will be an authority, not because we shouted or banged our fist, not necessarily because our words were more beautiful or poetic than someone else, but because behind our words, behind our expression, was an authority that was carved into our lives out of our journey. And so I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Oh, thank you so much. That was awesome.
Very welcome. Thanks
We
for having me.
received that. Yeah. Well, thank you. Hello to Sue. We bless your ministry there, your time in Europe, even during this COVID season, that it would be extremely productive for you and for God. And we just thank you, Paul. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. All of the,
my pleasure. Yeah.
that's so good. For all the writers out there, connect with Paul, go to his website, buy his books. Any message you can find by him on YouTube is worth listening to. Next week we'll be back. The next few weeks we'll be back with an assortment of authors and publishers to encourage you, bring you value, give you ideas. And so thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye, Paul.
Bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.